welcome back to episode 3 of Le Chemin du Roi. Now, if you're just joining us, just to recap, my name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. So in order to understand genealogy and do the research, it really is all about location, location, location. Understanding the places your ancestors would have lived in, some of the issues that would have affected them is paramount to being able to find them, understand them, and document, and really get to know them. It's not just, words or names on a page. Without that location, I feel just like a traveler without a map. Or in today's jargon, without GPS in my car. So I think that as we go along this road, I think what is very important for you to realize is understanding that history is going to be a building block. Now, just to let you know, I do have a website called Have Roots Will Travel, the YouTube channel, obviously, that you're watching right now. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Click on the notifications alert so you'll get, notified when I post new content. And like this video. All of the above helps me out so much. And remember, this is my travel itinerary. So if you have suggestions or comments, please, please, please feel free to email me at lisa@haverootswilltravel. Or just post a comment below. I try to respond to everything in a pretty quick amount of time. All right, let's get started, shall we? Now, the very first travel series that I'm doing is one dedicated to the Chemin du Roi, or the King's Road, also called the King's Highway. And the idea for doing this particular highway came to me as I've been doing my concurrent series of Les Filles du Roi. As these women came over to New France, they settled in areas that I had to get to know. Remember about location, location, location. And as I got to know it, I said, oh, I want to visit. And then that led me to find out where it was, which in turn led me to Le Chemin du Roi. Now, in my childhood, I'd heard of Le Chemin du Roi. I'd heard of it, but never put all the dots and the I's together. So here I am. Let's begin by exploring what is Le Chemin du Roi. So let's first talk about the road itself as it exists today. It's part of the Quebec highway system and is known now as Route 138. Now, Route 138 starts off, it's a very, very long road, and it starts off in Blas-Sablon, which is that big arrow that you see pointing on the left picture. It's a very remote town called Blas-Sablon, and winds its way throughout Quebec, ending at Elgin, Quebec, which is directly at the New York-Quebec border. And it's a whopping 880 miles long, or 1,420 kilometers. Passes through 5 regions of Quebec, and there are 17, so it's a big chunk of Quebec. And part of the highway that you see there's a section, and it's called Chemin du Roi, or the King's Highway, which is one of the oldest highways in Canada. This is the portion that we'll be traveling along during this series. Now, how did it come to be? Well, in 1706, Le Conseil Supérieur of New France decreed that a road be built to connect the houses along the north shore of the St. Lawrence River between Quebec City and Montreal. So work began in about 1731. About 25 years later, true government, right? Under the supervision of Grand Voyer, which means Senior Road Surveyor, Eustache Lannounier de Beauclerc, and was completed in 1737. And upon completion of this road, the Chemin du Roi was 7.4 meters wide, which is about 24 feet, and over 280 kilometers, 170 miles. And crossed, this is what gets me, 37 seigneuries. Now, those of you who have studied Quebec history know everything's about the seigneuries and how it's all divided. And 37 seigneuries, chances are, if you have relatives in Quebec or ancestors in Quebec, they lived on one of these 37 seigneuries. There was many, many, many more. But this road really, really crossed so many of those seigneuries that were so critical to Quebec history. Now, at the time of its inception in 1737, it was actually the longest road north of Mexico in all of North America. So that's pretty amazing. And I just can't imagine them building this road. Can you imagine? You have an ancestor, he's living in wherever, Noville or Quebec City or some other very small place, and all of a sudden they're building a road, and you've never seen such a thing. So I think it's remarkable. I think it's just an amazing thing to go on, and I can't wait. Now, it used to go all the way to Montreal, but in 1910, Montreal, the island of Montreal, the municipality of Montreal decided no, they wanted to just instead create Gouin Boulevard, and so the markers were taken down, and Gouin Boulevard then therefore is obviously a place I'm going to go to and start my journey when I start, because that is literally the real Chemin du Roi, kind of like Route 66 is in the United States. So, but I definitely think that you can still experience the thrill of it, you know. And the Chemin du Roi was the first roadway built between Quebec City and Montreal, and the one that could accommodate, get this, wheels, not the kind of wheels we use, but of course carriages, and obviously horses. It was easier to direct travel, made travel faster, and you can begin to see throughout from 1737 to even after the conquest in 1759, that it made Quebec, to my mind, and I could be all wet, but I think that it really created this sense of cohesiveness and a sense of solidarity, because you could connect the dots. And connecting the dots in any culture is critical. And so let's start our journey. Are we there yet? As you can tell by the blue line, the actual, it goes from Quebec City to Repentigny, which is all the road and all the little towns along the way that we are visiting. It takes about 2 hours and 20 minutes from straight start to finish if you don't stop. And also along the way in all the various towns, remember, you're actually traveling for the most part. There'll be 1 or 2 exceptions. For the most part, you'll be traveling on a Route 138, which will have those signposts, Chemin du Roi, Vieux Chemin, different signposts depending on the municipality, but they will all have Chemin du Roi at some point or another, and people, of course, love to have their picture taken. That would be me, and that to mark their journey, you know, and it is our guidepost, and we know we're on the right road. So first up today, Donnacona, which is a small town of approximately a little over 7,000 people. It is about 25 miles west of Quebec City, which is about 40 kilometers. Now, Donnacona, what's that name coming from? Donnacona, you know, where is it coming from? There exists a Donnacona in Quebec history. His name was Chief Donnacona, and he was a 16th century St. Lawrence Iroquois chief, and he was taken to France, if you can believe it, by Jacques Cartier himself with his 2 sons. And we believe he died sometime around 1539, along with his sons. Possibly they were victims of, you know, the many diseases that would have existed, and being a Native American, they would not have been exposed to that here in North America. So taking them out of their element certainly was not a good thing. So, but the city was not named after him. Who was it named after? Well, as boring as it sounds, it was actually named in 1915, and we'll go into the history of the town, but it was actually named Donnacona after the first paper mill that was erected at the mouth of the St. Lawrence, of the St. Jacques Cartier River. And so this really made the town and made the area. It was a very happening thing. This is an old postcard, I believe, that I found. And it really was an important manufacturing center. Not huge or anything like that, but certainly people knew the name. And that's where the city of Donnacona gets its name. So we've seen how Donnacona, you know, took its name, where it took its name, but it was obviously a place from, before 1915. Let's have a look. How did the Seigneurie Belair de la Pointe aux Écureuils, it's a big long name, become Donnacona in just under 295 years? Let's review. Jean Talon, that famous intendant, grants the Seigneurie of Pointe aux Écureuils to Toussaint Toupin Dussault and his son, Jean-Baptiste. Now, point of order, I want to make sure you all know Pointe aux Écureuils means squirrels. So it was the place where the squirrels met, essentially, a lot of squirrels. And that was in 1672. In 1676, Toussaint Toupin dies, and his son Jean-Baptiste inherits the land. Now, by 1700, Jean-Baptiste dies as well. His widow, Magdalene Mézeray, she inherits the land. Now, by 1742, and then there was a succession of seigneurs, as you can imagine, and 1742, Pointe aux Écureuils Parish is founded. Okay, now, 1915, Donnacona is founded as a municipality. Okay, we've talked about that. In 1967, Donnacona merges with the parish municipality of Pointe aux Écureuils, so they are now one and the same. Very, very long. It's just an interesting thing how things evolve, and that, my friends, is how a city is born in under 300 years. So for those of you with ancestors in this area, that when it was Pointe aux Écureuils, obviously the church, l'Église Saint-Jean-Baptiste de les Écureuils, there was a chapel built here, the very first chapel, 1739, which is just after the parish was founded. They finally built a stone church in 1785. And there was a great many modifications to the existing church, and it lasted quite a long time. No fires that I can tell. But finally, by 1927, can you believe it? Almost not quite 150 years later, but still, it managed to survive. They built a new church, and the older picture that I'm showing is one that predates that 1927. So this church that you're seeing on the left is actually the church how it would have looked prior to the new church of Saint Jean-Baptiste that they built, which is on the upper top portion of your screen. Now, 2014, the end of an era. This church was deconsecrated, which in Catholic terms means it no longer can serve as a religious place. But the cemetery is still there. The building is still there, and it is now used as a cultural center and has found, new life, if you will, and still is giving to the community, which is a wonderful thing. So the cemetery is still there. You can still walk the grounds, and certainly would encourage you to get that under your belt in terms of determining if your ancestors are buried at this particular church. Well, now, remember, we're really dealing with two different towns in one. And so when Donnacona came into existence in 1915, obviously this was all the people that came in, I would imagine, that moved to work in the paper mill and all of that, they wanted their own church. So in 1917, a very simple chapel, which you can see, was built. And then by 1924, a stone church was created. Now, all was well until a fire demolished half the church in 1945. Can you believe? They went through World War II, and now there's a fire. But by 1957, the new church that we see here today is open. The cemetery of Donnacona is beautiful and obviously dates from the beginning of the town as well. So again, if your ancestors came to Donnacona late, this would be the area you would be looking at. Hi, well, we got to eat, right? These are the dining in Donnacona. Now, not all of these are true dining spots, but I wanted to let you know what I like and what's on my list to look at and make sure I visit. We've got Boucherie Godin, which is been around for about 40 years. It started in Cap Santé, and now this is a new location in Donnacona. What I love is you walk into a meat shop and it's got the smells and the look and the feel of the place. This is as local as you can get it. Plus, usually they've got some locally made food as well, so you really get a sense of the culture. So I love that idea, especially if I'm going to be going in my RV. I'm going to definitely stock up. If not, I'll probably be just grabbing a snack. But Brasserie La Fosse, just a simple, place to get an adult beverage. It's a microbrewery. It's got all kinds of interesting food. But when I looked at it, it had a date that it opened in 2019, just before the pandemic. So the fact that it has thrived and it's still around, I salute their entrepreneurial. I wanted to give them a plug. Now, the next four are local chains to some extent. Tim Hortons is national, of course. You haven't lived until you had a coffee and a donut at Tim Hortons. But don't forget, they make excellent soup and sandwiches as well. So you can definitely have breakfast and definitely have lots of really yummy stuff. They've got donuts and cookies and Timbits and all that good. It's for the road, Valentine is a place where, being a daughter of Drummondville, Drummondville is the king of poutines. Valentine is pronounced this way, is a chain that features French fries and hot dogs and all that good stuff, and poutines, and they make a decent poutine. So I would definitely advise you to, if you've never had a poutine and this is your opportunity, you won't go wrong. Ben and Florentine is the local is a chain that is actually in Quebec and also in other provinces, I'm told. I have never been here. I am definitely trying this one out. We've got a few Ben and Florentines along the highway that we'll be traveling. It's very fresh and very innovative breakfast and lunch cuisine. So definitely a place I want to give a try out for. And then Le Normandais is kind of like, it's got everything, a little bit of everything. I've eaten here quite a number of times. It's obviously a chain throughout Quebec, and it's got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's got a homey feel. You can take the family here. Very, very good. To give it, and prices are reasonable as well. I kind of think of it as Denny's meets French Canada, and so think of it that way. I've posted all the links to these places on the notes, so you can definitely be able to partake of these little dining spots if and when you are in Donnacona. Well, the next town we're looking at is Cap Santé, which means Cape Health. How did it get its name? Well, apparently the soldiers would come down to Cap Santé, or this place, and had some healing going on. I have a feeling it had to do with the Native Americans, and I that's my feeling. We'll see if I'm right. Anyway, the nickname stuck, and it was called Cap Santé. And the first settlers arrived here about 1679, and in 1714, the village became an official parish. It is truly a breathtaking place. Anyone who's ever been here will tell you it's just everything you can imagine about quaint. This is it. So the most important thing in one of these small villages is the church. The present-day church is a historically registered building, which was built between 1754 to 1767. It was interrupted by a little thing called the 7 Years' War, and it is one of the last buildings to be constructed under the French regime. So l'Église Saint-Famille is renowned, actually, as being a real reflection of what New France was all about. The cemetery, of course, the Cimetière Sainte-Famille de Saint-Cap, the Cap Santé, dates from 1711 as well. And the middle photo, obviously it's been, always modified. Churches in Quebec are always undergoing some sort of transformation. This is truly a breathtaking church, and one of the oldest in L'Escale du Roi is their tourist information, and it's also a cafe. And on the second floor, they have an art gallery, so that's a good thing. I've listed the notes in the notes. I've listed the website for you to have a look at. La Perle du Roi, which really means the King's Pearl. It's a fine dining restaurant on Route 138, and it's affiliated with one that we'll see in a little bit. And yes, it overlooks the St. Lawrence. I cannot wait to sit here. The menu looks phenomenal, fresh. Seafood, I'm sure, and done always with that unique Quebec flair. And now we come to Portneuf, which literally means New Harbor. This area got its start in 1636, and it was granted by la Compagnie de la Nouvelle-France as a seigneurie to Jacques Le Neuf de la Poterie, who would eventually become the substitute governor of Trois-Rivières. Look at that date, 1636. How old is this place? Trois-Rivières, or that region, was founded in 1634. So we now know this is one of the oldest in Quebec. The first colonists came around 1640, and they would settle right along the mouth of the river. So let me tell you a little tale about the story of two churches in one small town. Portneuf is not very big, but in 1674, a first chapel was dedicated to the Nativity of Notre Dame and was built on the seigneurie of Portneuf. It was abandoned in 1709 in favor of the newly built chapel in Cap Santé, which we just saw. It was not until 1860 that the first church was finally built in Portneuf, even though it's one of the oldest. They just said, we want to go to Cap Santé for church. So from there, 1860, we fast forward. Then the second church in this city was built in 1927. When I read about it, it was just remarkable. It was to accommodate the villagers who lived to the north of the city and had created their own municipality. And so they really didn't want to make the trek. Even though other generations had made the trek to another town, these people just said, you know what? I want my own church. So it was. The bishop decreed that they could have. So the Église Notre-Dame Saint-Rosaire was born. And so that is how this town ended up having two churches. They're quite a bit apart, but they're not like really far apart, if you know what I mean. Have a look when you go. Well, now we're going to dine in Portneuf, and that Perle du Saint-Laurent looks vaguely familiar. Why? Because we just saw Le Perle du Roi in Cap Santé, and that's its sister restaurant. It's only open. La Perle du Saint-Laurent is only open between May and October because it literally sits on the pier of Portneuf. Can you imagine the view? And in the winter, it relocates to the Cap Santé because, as you can imagine, you cannot walk on that pier during the winter, nor would you want to. The next restaurant I found was a place called Pizzeria Paquette. At first, I was like, okay, it's a pizza place. But when I started digging a little deeper, it actually has been around for a while. It started in 1996. And it looks like a wonderful place to have what is now known as an adult beverage and a casual meal. But this restaurant is actually one of 6 branches that this restaurant. This is the thing about Quebec and Quebecers, that once they have a good concept, we saw that in other chains, they replicate it. They are ever expanding and looking for opportunities. That is probably one thing that I can tell you is a trait that you will find in all people with deep Quebec roots. They look for opportunities. So they have 2 of these are actually along Route 138 in Donnacona and in Saint-Augustin-de-Mar. So we have another couple that we can look at, as well as the one in Portneuf. So definitely check this out when you are visiting. I will be posting the website information as well, so you can look it up. And with that, we end day 3 of our visits to Donnacona, Cap Santé, and Portneuf. I hope you've enjoyed this trip to the very, very small towns, but ones with richness in history. And if your ancestors come from here, absolutely connected to the Chemin-Joie and absolutely essential to understanding their contributions to Quebec history. Until episode 4, when we explore new territories, I will bid you adieu. Au revoir.